I don't want to be vain or anything, but like when you're on camera, it's like, what do I look like here?
Oh, you look fine. I have reading glasses, but well, I'm sorry, I have driving glasses. But when
Mm.
I'm close up and reading, I have to take them off. Okay, we have about 10 people that's already joined. Let me see, I need to make the captioner, give her the power to type. I don't see her.
I'm gonna take my glasses off for a minute. I have to wear their computer glasses because I have an astigmatism, but they have
Oh, okay.
the blue screen thing. So um, when I look at a computer or there's any light reflected off the surface of my glasses, it'll leave little blue light on. You can probably, yeah, you can kind of see it.
Yeah, I see it.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
then I'm just like, oh, that's really distracting. So it is what it is. Gotta wear them so you can see.
I know that I need some new ones, either some reading ones. I'm looking for the captioner.
Well, I think this will be really fun. I hope people enjoy it. I
I'm
like
sure
it.
they will. I'm sure they will get a lot out of it. I
I'm
love where you have
glad
sort of a sort of takeaway. I mean, you can say, we sent out the attachments that you sent us
Mhm.
out yesterday. So they have a copy of the PDF presentation and the other two attachments that you sent.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So we try and especially with this presentation, because self-care is kind of really driven by the person, we try and give people tools, like tools they can walk away with and use in their own lives. Because otherwise it's like, well, I could talk to you about self-care all day, but if I'm not giving you something
Exactly. That's
to
very
do it.
We
Yeah.
believe, and that's what parents ask for. They ask for
Yeah.
tools and strategies.
I probably need to call ECAC and get a family advocate or something to help me with my own stuff with my kid.
Yeah, you told me that you're a mom of a child with special needs. So give me a
No,
call.
so are we. Deborah and I both are as well.
Yeah.
It's such a small community, but it ends up, you meet so many people, so it becomes a big community afterwards. It's kind of nice.
That's one reason we love working at ECAC is we're by parents for parents.
Mm-hmm.
There's,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it gives you a great sense of community.
Yeah. I follow you all on Facebook. And so I download every time something is shared, like a picture or a graphic that resonates with me, I always save it to my phone.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
There was something you guys shared yesterday and I saved it. I was like, I need to come back to that and look at it.
Was it on inclusion? Was it the inclusion one?
It may have been. There was something I sent to my husband about speech therapy. Well, because my son is in speech therapy. And there was something you guys had posted that was so good. And it was like, you can't use your words to kids.
Oh, I saw that. That was good.
I was like, that is so true. We have to stop saying that to kids.
Well, that resonated with me too, because even with my typical kids, I think it really resonates. But our social media lead, Amy, is awesome. She's just
really good.
Very gifted in that respect. That's definitely her forte for sure.
Yeah, this was the Family Guide to At-Home Learning. I saved that. I was like, ooh, we're gonna need that. We're all gonna need that.
Yes. Someone just made a comment that they have a disability, and so it was a lovely comment. We appreciate that comment. I have a disability, so it's nice that everyone has a connection, and amen to that. We are all interconnected, and if COVID hasn't taught us anything else. It has taught us that.
Absolutely. And I think that brings up a really good point about empathy. And this is a shared collective experience. And we'll talk a little bit about that in this presentation. Just full transparency, I identify as somebody who's neurodiverse. I have ADHD and a little touch of OCD with that. So I had a late diagnosis as a teenager. It kind of, once you figure out that your brain works differently and that's okay, then it kind of makes things a little bit easier to navigate. Not necessarily easier, but you know what lens you're looking through when you have that figured out. So,
well, and it's wonderful that you present the self-care webinar, because you have to practice what you preach.
I'm going to talk about that too. I'm going to talk about that too, because there's a story. I like to start with a story. But I'm going to hold on to that story until we are ready to go.
It is about.
Okay. She just signed in. Hold on. Let me see if I can give her to type, and then.
And everybody who's signing on, we are going to start in just a minute. We're getting our captioner all signed in and engaged with us. Make sure we provide appropriate accessibility for anyone and everyone who needs it. So just hold on with us and we'll be right with you.
I was going to try and do the hair down thing today, but I just can't. It's too much.
You know what? The other thing COVID has taught all of us is we all have to give each other a whole lot of grace.
Oh, yeah.
The grace is freely given around here.
Okay, Tammy, do you have the authority to type?
Is available. It says it is available now.
Okay, so I know Richard needs it. Richard, you know how to go to the bottom of the screen and turn on.
The bottom right is the
closed caption
box. It's closed caption box. If you click on that,
and show subtitle.
Check something out.
Can you type something, Tammy, as a test? Okay, Richard, can you see what she's typing? Okay, perfect. All righty. Thank you. I know that I really want to try to stay on time. It's 3 o'clock because we have a lot of great information to cover, and we also want to allow time for Q&A. And we had over 200 people to sign up for this webinar. Actually, when we sent out a survey, this is one of the topics that a lot of the parents said that they wanted to know more about. They wanted to know more about self-care. They wanted to know more about respite care. And we can talk about that later during Q&A. In today's environment, we all need that. And my name, let me go ahead and start with introductions. This webinar will be recorded, and I'm gonna go ahead and start the recording. And we will save the transcript if anyone needs it. You should have received the handouts from Kate yesterday if you registered for the webinar. I think there should have been 3 handouts, one being the PowerPoint presentation that she's going to speak from today. And so let me start the recording, see if I do that right. Okay, we have started the recording, and let me introduce myself. My name is Deborah Pickens. I'm a parent educator with ECAC, which stands for Exceptional Children Assistance Center. And I've been with ECAC for going on 7 years now. I'm also the co-director for the North Carolina Deafblind Project. And I also have a son that's totally blind with progressive hearing loss. And I have a daughter that's a teacher. And the PTI, Parent Training and Information Center, we're the North Carolina Training Center for Special Education. We work closely with the Department of Public Instruction. All of our parent educators have children with special needs. So if we help a lot of parents as it relates to IEPs, Individualized Education Program, and especially now your rights in terms of the placement of your child going back to school next month or the end of this month. And so if you have any questions as it relates to special education and individualized education program, feel free to call ECAC, and I'll put my email address in the chat box. If you have any questions, we'll be sure to get you to the resources, people that you need. We cover the entire state, so we have a lot of great resources throughout the state as it relates to special education. And I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to turn it over to my coworker, Ro Barker, and let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. We're so glad you're here today. We all know that you can't pour from an empty cup, and COVID has created a lot of fatigue and we don't really have a light at the end of the tunnel yet. So I'm glad you're here, and we're excited to hear what Kate has to say. My name is Rowena Barker. I am the Family Engagement Coordinator for the North Carolina Deafblind Project. I am also the mother of 3 children, 2 of whom have disabilities. My oldest daughter has a significant intellectual disability. My middle child is on our North Carolina Deafblind census. He has significant and complex needs and has Charge syndrome. And my youngest son is a typical young adult. So North Carolina Deafblind Project, in a nutshell, we are a federally funded grant. We work in collaboration with North Carolina Department of Public Instruction and East Carolina University. Through ECAC, our aspect is the family support and the family engagement. We provide supports and services for families and educators who have learners with deaf blindness from birth to age 21. We help we help the families we serve navigate special education. Provide a lot of IEP troubleshooting. We connect the families we serve to community resources, the various myriad of things they may need. We help families find their voice, know their rights and policies. We work in collaboration with the National Center on Deaf Blindness. So we have access to unbelievable resources, and we are able to access resources on a state level and a national level. So we help the families we serve gain access to what they need for their particular situations. We also offer ongoing, although COVID has slowed us down, we hope just briefly in this aspect, we are continually offering workshops, webinars, trainings, institutes, for really specifically the niche areas the families need, particular aspects. Last summer we provided 2 different weekend institutes on transition that were phenomenal. We also help families connect and network with each other. We know that families gain so much wisdom from learning from each other, and we help them meet each other and learn from each other. And we also just provide ongoing outreach and assistance in all other aspects. That is all I need to say about the North Carolina Deafblind Project. Again, I'm going to pass it back to Deborah to let Kate get going.
And I'm going to actually let Kate introduce herself. She's the Community Engagement Specialist with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, the Division of Mental Health. I'm assuming that developmental delay. Let her explain. Actually,
I'll do our acronym.
Presentation. Okay. And also she will go over the objectives of this webinar. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Kate.
Thank you so much, Deborah.
I'm going to go off of camera, but if you need
All right. I really appreciate you all being here today. Thank you both ECAC, Deborah and Rowena for the wonderful introduction. I want to thank our closed captioner for today, providing that transcript and making it accessible to our participants. As Deborah said, my name is Kate Barrow, and I am a community engagement specialist with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, the Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Abuse Services. Very long acronym, so you'll see it abbreviated as MHDDSAS. I also today, you'll notice my Zoom background. It says, I want you to have the scoop on managing stress. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what scoop is later in this presentation, but thank you for being here. So the core concepts are the things that I hope that you take away from this particular presentation today is an understanding of what self-care is. We're going to go over 4 essential elements of self-care. We kind of look at this in the context of wellness, and there are 8 dimensions of wellness, but we're only going to focus on 4 of those today. We're going to go over the wheel of feelings and validation. I think during this time of COVID, when we're kind of all physically separated from our friends and family and our loved ones, and our schedules and our routines are a little bit off and a little bit different than they used to be, we need a lot of validation for what we're feeling and going through right now. And then we're going to talk about how to make a self-care plan and how you can keep it. I know a lot of the questions that came in the registration had a lot to do with how do you make time for self-care. And so we're going to talk about that, and I hope that you use the chat to interact with me as much as possible during this presentation. I also want to make sure that when you leave this webinar today, that you have a sense of hope that you can do this. Self-care is it's not easy, it is work, and we're going to talk about that, but you can do this. And then we're going to talk about scoop. Just a little fair warning, I'm working from home and I am a mom, and so you may hear my children in the background. I just heard my son, he's coming in from outside, and he's a little vocal sometimes. So just keep that in mind and appreciate the grace in that situation. I want you all to, hopefully, if you are on social media, you will follow the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. We have Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pages. I love our Instagram page because it's very simple, simple photos and graphics about the things that we do at the department. Right now, we're really doing a lot around COVID-19. We're also doing a lot with managing stress, and so I hope you'll look into that for yourself if you're on social media. If something resonates with you today, if something really, like, you feel that, you're like, yes, I get this, this really means a lot to me, we hope that you share that on your social media, and you can tag the department. The tag for that is the @NCDHHS. We want to make sure that we can share the message of self-care. That's really important for parents, for people who are not parents, people who are living alone. We just want to share that message as much as possible. You can use the hashtag sharing the scoop and mental wellness to follow the conversation. Those are the 2 that we'd hope you use. I'm going to go on to the next slide here. There are some slides in this. It looks like a really long slideshow, right? There's 47 slides in this slide deck. However, slides 20, 23, and 25 through 28 are all printable slides that you can use to help create your own self-care plan. You don't have to use them. They're just there as guides to get you started. We also have links throughout this document and links at the end of this document to help people really find more information on how to make a self-care plan, some coping tips. We want to connect you with some community resources and also some YouTube videos to help you on your journey. So again, there's different ways of making a self-care plan. Everybody has a different idea of what will work for them and what is best for them. And this may not work for you. Some of it may work for you, but not all of it may work for you. But it's really just a way to start thinking about how you can make a self-care routine that you can do. And I'm sorry, my mouse is on the other side of my desk, so I keep reaching back. One thing that I do want to point out, I cannot answer any clinical questions today or case-by-case questions on specific issues. We do have a presentation we do called Who You Gonna Call? And I am happy to help direct questions to clinical staff if there's something that you have a pressing issue and you really need some additional help. We can help filter that information to the right person, but I am not clinical staff. I just want to put that out there. On this slide, you have the link to the behavioral health and IDD question page for COVID-19. When you get to this page, it is a smart sheet document, so it doesn't necessarily look like a typical DHHS website. It's a form, so you'll fill it out if you have questions related to services and COVID-19. We want people to know that there is help out there. Hope for NC is our helpline for resiliency and recovery. It was started on the eastern part of the state to help recovery for hurricane relief and is now statewide as we are in the COVID-19 pandemic. We also have a new line called Hope for Healers, and that is for our frontline healthcare workers. So our EMTs, our nurses, our doctors, anybody who is dealing, our direct support professionals, especially, anybody who is on that front line who may need some mental health or behavioral health assistance during this time. Again, crisis contact information is at the end. And one of the handouts that I sent to Deborah to distribute is the community engagement and empowerment teams monthly update. We send that out every month. It includes a long list of crisis information if you need that, including our customer service and community rights team phone number. That's a really helpful guide to if you need crisis services or you're looking for some help in some specific areas. So the next slide, I just want you to know you are not alone. So I like to start with this. I always laugh when I see that picture. It feels really goofy. You're not alone in this. I'm a parent, and I'm a parent of 5 children. Actually, I have 3 stepchildren and 2 biological children. My oldest stepchild is now 22 and is on the autism spectrum. She was originally diagnosed with Asperger's at 16. My son is 3 and he has been diagnosed with sensory processing disorder and an expressive speech delay. And we're working towards getting a more formal diagnosis in terms of whether or not he's also on the spectrum or if he has ADHD. I myself, I am a person who I identify as neurodiverse. I have ADHD, well, it's ADD now, but at the time I was diagnosed, it was ADD, and now I think it's been lumped in with ADHD. But I have ADD and a little touch of OCD, and I am in recovery from a perinatal mood disorder. I had severe postpartum depression after having my son. So some of this that we're going to go over today is from my personal experience, learned from the clinicians that worked with me and through intensive outpatient therapy. A lot of it is from our social workers and clinicians at the division, and also just basic research on the internet. Gotta love that. The internet and Google for helping on things like that. Okay, so I like to also point out, this is a picture of me from 2019, back in October. about a year ago. Just want to point out, like, I look nicely dressed, got my hair down and kind of professional. The funny part about this is that working from home has given me a new perspective on how I get ready in the morning, what my priorities are. And today I attempted to look as professional as I do in this photo, but most days I've got my mom hair up. I'm in our basement. My computer setup is in our basement, and it's a little bit cold down here. So a lot of times I'm in a sweatshirt because I get cold very easily. So I kind of joke about the mom hair, don't care, quarantine hair, don't care. That's kind of where I am right now when it comes to presentation of self. Today was a little bit different. I felt really good this morning when I woke up. I started this presentation, not just this particular one, but the development of this training back in March when our State Consumer and Family Advisory Committee asked me to give them a presentation on self-care. And to be honest, we did not have one developed. So I started thinking about and working with my team on how would we do this if we were going to give a presentation on self-care. And I started thinking, you know, the funny thing about that is that I am not currently, this is back in April, March and April, I was not doing self-care in March and April. Before COVID-19, my version of self-care was to go through the drive-through at Starbucks, maybe get myself, you know, my favorite chai tea latte, or I would take a couple of hours on Sunday and go to Target by myself and wander aimlessly up and down the aisles in Target. I still have strong feelings about Target. I still love it, but going there is not necessarily safe all the time. And on top of that, I realized that my Target trips, that is not really self-care. So I started in rereading some of my materials from my intensive outpatient therapy and doing some reading from online, decided that I would start doing self-care in March. And what that looked like for me was trying to do yoga. So the last 2 weeks of March, I set up my yoga mat in my living room, and found out that the videos that I had bought in 2010 no longer played in my DVD player. We have an Xbox, and so the DVDs were not compatible. And so I had to try something from somewhere else. And I think I got about 15 minutes in of stretching and yoga. And during that time, I rolled my mat out, and I mentioned earlier that I have a 3-year-old with sensory processing disorder. And I love that kid because he has endless amounts of energy. Like if I could just have a drop of his energy, I think that would sustain me for a very long time. And I rolled my mat out, and my son immediately thought, oh, this is a measure for how long I can jump. So I'm going to start at one end of the mat, and I'm going to try and jump the whole length of this yoga mat. And then as I was trying to do downward facing dog, which is where you have your hands flat on the ground and you're kind of making an arch with your body, my son thought, well, that's really funny. Mommy has just become a tunnel. So I'm going to see how many times I can go underneath mom while she's stretching. I think towards the end, he was taking his tractor toys and trying to roll them up and down my legs. And I thought, this is like the most unsuccessful attempt at doing yoga that I have ever done in my entire life. And it was true. It didn't feel great, but I did it. And that was the start. And I realized it doesn't have to be perfect, right? The first time you try something, it doesn't have to be perfect. But what we're going for is progress, trying to do something for ourselves. And I did sleep better that night. I did feel a lot better. So let's have a little reality check here. In the chat, if you can, if you're interested, if you would put what you think self-care is. Okay, so we're going to do a little check-in on what is self-care to you? What are you doing right now for self-care? And how are you feeling with all of the stuff that's happening? I know right now a lot of kids are going back to school, and we're having a lot of feelings about that, about what that looks like, whether it's virtual or in person, or some parents are choosing to homeschool. So let's do a little check-in. Going for a daily walk, hiking. Wow, lots of answers here. Rest some each day, meal planning, bubble bath, hiding in a closet, sitting outside. I can relate to that, hiding in a closet. I've tried that. So true story, my daughter can pick locks now with her little hair time. Gardening, pedicure, walking, sitting outside, baking. Yeah, we see a lot of people baking now. I don't know if you've seen that online where people are kind of baking tons of bread and cakes, and it's like, this is, you know, you wonder how much flour and sugar and water they're going through. Let's see, what else do we have? Bird watching. That's a good one. Taking care of yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually. I think you looked at the presentation before we got to this. Taking a nap, bubble bath, eating right, attempting to get some sleep. Yep. Meditation and yoga. There's a lot of good things in here. Exercise is crucial for me. COVID has been rough. It has been rough, Amy. COVID has been really rough for all of us. Anything that can help you live in the present moment. Absolutely. Yeah, so there are some great things right here. Good sleep. I usually work out. Self-care is listening to myself and give myself a walk, a time out to close my eyes, or a delicious and nutritious snack. Absolutely. These are all really good. All right. Pray and sitting on the front porch rocker. Man, I love porch sitting. We used to have a great porch in our old house, but we'll get there. So Corona coaster, I found this online and I thought it was really funny and very true. The Corona coaster, according to the Urban Dictionary, is the unofficial word used to describe the roller coaster of emotions, the feelings of uncertainty, anxiety, and helplessness when we listen to the news. When we get new information, this says concerning humankind's demise. I'm not sure if we're really that far yet, but definitely the ups and downs of the pandemic, right? 10 minutes of silence. Do you actually get 10 minutes of silence? That is awesome. I would love to get 10 minutes of silence. That's amazing. All right. What exactly is self-care? So the media version, they want us to think that bubble baths and bubble baths are part of self-care or caring for ourselves, but we're going to dig deeper into this. Going for a walk, absolutely. Buying yourself something nice, Target trips. Binge watching a show on Netflix. I know a lot of people have probably watched a lot of TV during this time. That's probably true. And that's okay. But what is the version of self-care beyond the media presentation? So bubble baths are amazing, right? That's a way we take care of ourselves, our physical bodies. But there's self-care is really more than just the things that we talked about. Some of the, it is all of these things, but it's a little bit more, right? Our self-care is really a plan to meet the needs of what it means to be human. And let's be real, being human is not easy. It's hard. It's hard to be a human being. It's hard to be a good human being too. But taking care of our mental health and well-being, taking care of our physical health and well-being, our emotional or our hearts, so our relationships, and our spiritual health or our spirit. So these are the 4 elements that we're going to focus on today. These are also 4 of the 8 elements of SAMHSA's 8 dimensions of wellness. But we're going to talk just today about these specific 4. All right, so this is kind of I know it looks a little cartoonish, but this is a way to think about self-care in these 4 elements, right? So we have, in our mental health care, we think about the mind, right? Things that help us learn, things that help us think, and things that help us grow. Physical health, we really are focusing on the things that help us live and move and breathe. So you can think about ways that we eat, things that we eat, the ways that we move, how we focus on our breath. So in resiliency training, they teach you how to refocus your breathing. And sometimes just taking 3 deep breaths can reset how your body is feeling. We know that stress is an embodied experience. And what that means is that stress is not just something that makes our brains go haywire. It does, but we actually feel that physically in our body. Our body will tense up, our breathing changes, and we're not in that resiliency zone that we need to be in to make good decisions. So really, you can do a lot of different things. Sometimes, like the mental health aspect of this, we're really thinking about things that bring you into a state of mindfulness, so that you're not always hyper-focused on the things that are stressing you out. And then for some people, the spiritual aspect of like for me, for example, the spiritual aspect of self-care is nurturing my inner child. So the things that bring me joy, the things that bring purpose and meaning to my life. And when we talk about emotional wellness or emotional well-being, we're talking about heart work, and that's our relationships with one another. It includes the relationship we have with ourselves and our own self-love. And it also includes the relationship that we have with those around us. It can be your children, your significant other, your family members, extended or whatnot. It can be your neighbors and your friends. Those are all valuable relationships in our emotional heart work. So sometimes too, I just want to point out when we're not really focusing on some of these aspects, we really do feel down, not just mentally depressed, but our bodies start to feel extra fatigued. We may experience pain or stomach aches. That's especially true in children. You'll hear children when they talk about having anxiety, they don't say, "Mommy, I feel anxious," right? They don't know that word. So they'll say something like, "My tummy hurts," or I feel funny. I feel like I have butterflies in my tummy. And that's how they talk about how they're feeling emotionally. And so it's really important to be able to tune into that. I find personally when my mental health and stress is getting to me, I start to neglect my nutrition. And so I'll do things like I'll extra indulge, because I think it's okay to have a kind of moderation of sweets, but I will extra indulge. And you can be honest and say that you do this too. It'll make me feel better. But eating cookies or going to the store and getting chocolate bars or candy or things like that, because they make us feel good, right? They hit those endorphin levels in your brain and release some happy feelings, and it's temporary. It's not real, but it's there. So why is self-care important? Why is self-care important right now? Well, we are in just unprecedented times, right? Nobody woke up in March and thought, what would be really interesting? Going through a pandemic. That is exactly what we are prepared for right now. No, we weren't thinking that, right? That's not what we thought in 2020, the beginning of 2020. The importance of self-care. Self-care reminds us that we have value, that we are value people beyond our productivity, beyond what we do for our families. We have worth, and our needs are important. Your feelings right now are valid, and you need to hold space for how you're feeling. So I read some of the questions that came in. I could get a sense that people are really feeling stressed out right now, really feeling overwhelmed with all the things that are going on. And if you're a parent, your children are going back to school, there's an added stress there because you're thinking about what are the needs of my kids right now? How am I meeting those needs? And your brain is probably being pulled in 6 different directions, and that's stressful. You may be feeling some depression and anxiety. That's natural reactions in in times of high stress. And practicing resilience as part of your self-care routine will help keep you going for a positive perspective. Self-care is also life-affirming. I think Rowena said at the beginning, you can't pour from an empty cup. That was something, that's one of my favorite sayings. My mom said that to me a lot right after I had my daughter. She said, you have to do self-care. And I said, well, I took a shower today. Is that self-care? Partially, yes. But definitely you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So if you look at this picture, this image has 5 glasses. And on one side of the glass by a green bubble where it says no self-care, the glass is empty. On the other side of the glasses, on the other side of the image is a glass that's filled to almost to the brim. And it's next to a little blue bubble that says good self-care. So when we are not engaging in self-care, and some of us probably fall in the middle where we do a little bit of self-care, so we fill the glass up a little bit, we pour again, we do a little self-care, we pour again. Some of us probably fit somewhere in the middle here, right? Some of us may not. Some of us may have an empty cup and we are burned out. I'm sure you've heard of caregiver fatigue. That is a real thing. It happens to parents of young children. It happens to parents of older children. It happens to special needs parents a lot. And it can happen to adults who are taking care of their aging parents. So right now, we really need to look at this and kind of do a little measurement. You know, where do I fall right now? I feel like I'm kind of a little bit in the middle, maybe getting towards that second to last glass where I'm starting to feel a little empty. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't really been doing as much self-care as I should lately. So this is good timing and motivation to get back to it. One thing I hope that you take away from this is that self-love is really important. It's a really important aspect to be emphasized in self-care. Self-love is truly the regard for one's own being and happiness. As parents, I think sometimes we tend to put our own happiness and our own well-being aside for in order to care for others for the sake of our kids, and that can deplete us very quickly. So going back to that self-love and knowing that we are worthy of being happy and taking care of our well-being is something I want you to hold on to. There are some components to self-love that include compassion for yourself. So if you are a person that really is, your friends would describe you as being compassionate, then showing yourself that same level of compassion is as important as showing others compassion. So the kindness you show to your friends and to your family and those that you care about, you need to show to yourself too. Again, going back to that concept of you can't pour from an empty cup, and being unkind to yourself and not showing yourself compassion, being hard on yourself in times of stress is not self-love. It's not self-compassion. And so you are allowed to hold some space and grace for yourself in this time and any time you're doing caregiving. There's 3 facets of self-love that include mindfulness, self-kindness, and common humanity. So one of the things mentioned at the beginning of this presentation is that you are not alone. We are all going through this right now. It feels so isolating because we are home. And I know there's a few, folks that maybe are single parents and are feeling extra isolated right now. Some of you mentioned that your significant other is not as supportive of you, and that's really hard. But know that you're not alone in that, and that we share that as humans, we share that experience. Next thing, and to keep this in mind is keeping mindfulness in mind. Mindfulness is the practice of shutting out negative self-talk or discouraging words. I liked this picture of the different mixtapes. It reminded me of the 80s and 90s, where you know, if you remember recording your favorite songs on your boombox, and you would sit there by the radio and wait for your favorite song to come on so you could hit play and record at the same time. I remember those days. But we all have inner tapes, right? We all have things that we say to ourselves most days. And when we are stressed out and during times of stress, those things can be amplified. Sometimes it's negative criticism. You know, we kind of do that, oh, I could have done better if I had done X, Y, and Z. If I had just thought about this, then that wouldn't have happened. So those are negative tapes, and I want you to visually think about taking that tape out of the recorder and just tossing it to the side. And let's redirect your self-talk to positive affirmations. Let's re-record some of those tapes. Sometimes we need to do things that shut off our negativity, our negative self-talk. We need to practice a mindfulness that makes our brains focus, and that goes back to that mental health, mental well-being. But we need to do something maybe with our hands or with our bodies that refocuses our brains away from that negative self-talk, away from that spiraling focus on all the things that are bad that are happening around us, and do something that engages our brain in thinking about something else. So that can be a hobby or a craft or a practice. I know at the beginning of this, I tried to learn how to sew so I could sew face masks. That has been paused, and I've started painting again. You may find yourself drawn to reading. Reading is a really great way to practice mindfulness, or listening to books on tape, anything that kind of shifts your focus away from the negative self-talk and back into something that is positive. You may decide, you know, listening to music is also another form of mindfulness practice, but it's important that you find something for you. Okay, I'm seeing, I've been word search and doing a lot of solitaire. Depleted, definitely depleted. How do we make, okay, I see that's a technical question. Yeah, a lot of people I know are kind of in this position where they've had to, maybe their jobs have changed, and that's really hard too. That can add to stress and depression. So the next slide, this is the wheel of emotions, and this was also sent out as a handout, so you can print it or you know, save it on your phone or something like that, something where you can see it bigger. This is really small. And I apologize for that, but it does talk about the different emotions that you may be going through right now. So during times of stress and anxiety, you may have a harder time talking about how you're feeling. So a lot of times I tell people I'm really sad, mad right now. Like I'm angry about some things, but I'm also sad about some things. Or I say something where somebody posted a picture earlier, and it was of a sunset over the ocean, and the clouds over the ocean looked like a dinosaur or Godzilla, and somebody made the reference to Godzilla, and I said, please don't tempt 2020 like that. And it's funny, but you're also like, let's not make this any let's not ask for anything else, because I can't imagine what that would be like. So sometimes finding the right words for what we're feeling is really challenging. So this wheel kind of helps us dig down and drill down into what we're feeling. And it can be used when we're not feeling anxious and depressed. We can actually use this when we're feeling really happy. We can use this when we're feeling surprised. We can use it when we're feeling ecstatic, you know, and so the innermost wheel are some basic emotions. And as you work your way out towards the outside of the wheel, it goes into more detailed words. So like one of the words for sad, for example, is lonely or vulnerable. So you may be feeling vulnerable right now. And then if you dig down deeper into that, it may be really grief that you're feeling. Maybe we are feeling a lot of grief. I feel like there is a lot of collective grief going on. This is a change in the way that we've always known things to be. And there's a loss there, and we're feeling that loss. So one thing you can do, if you do decide to print this out or save it, you can do a little check-in with yourself in the morning. Just look at it and say, how am I really feeling today? How, you know, did I wake up on the wrong side of the bed? Am I really grumpy and I'm just feeling negative? Because that's going to set the tone for your day. So you can use this to check in the morning. You can use it to check in the afternoon or the evening and kind of look at it and say, okay, well, you know, today maybe I started out a little rough and I was feeling really exhausted and a little overwhelmed. But since this morning, I've gotten to talk to a friend, and so now I'm feeling a little happier. You know, those are the kinds of ways you can check in with yourself using the wheel of emotions. All right, and I know we're getting tough on time, so let me kind of get through this. So one of the things I hope that you keep in mind is what is in your control, right? A lot of this is not in our control, right? What is our responsibility? What is not our responsibility? So the things on the inner circle, there's two circles here. On the inner circle, it says, this is my responsibility. The things like our words, our behavior, our actions, our efforts, our mistakes, our ideas, and the consequences to our actions. Those are all our responsibility. The things that are not our responsibility are other people's words, other people's behavior, or other people's actions or beliefs or mistakes. Those are not, we're not responsible for that, and we can't take that on. And when we do, that adds to our stress. It makes us feel overburdened. You know, we're not responsible for what other people do in the community. We can only be responsible for ourselves. So it's really, really hard to kind of zero in on that sometimes. So this is a good reminder. So the next slide talks about having compassion and empathy. There is an embedded YouTube video here that talks about empathy and helping to understand empathy. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's a Sesame Street video. I love it, and it explains empathy very, very well. So this is something you may want to share with your children if you have any. But empathy is really the ability to understand or imagine and be sensitive to the feelings of another person. So we talked about having self-compassion, and self-empathy is also part of that. This humanizes the experience. So right now, you probably are feeling, you may be feeling a little anxious and depressed. You may be a little stressed out. And when you think about the compassion you have for yourself and the empathy you have for others, that helps to really humanize this experience of going through the pandemic. So during times of crisis, empathy and compassion remind us that we're in this together. And we can offer validation of those feelings and experiences through acts of empathy, or through the concept of empathy. Helping others also helps me. Yeah, that's true, as long as we're not forgetting ourselves either. So toxic positivity. Has anybody ever heard this term, toxic positivity? Feel free to use the chat if you've heard of this before. This is a little newer to me, and so, but I liked this. This really resonated with me. It refers to keeping positive and being positive only. It rejects the idea that you can't have negative emotions. Yes, there are a lot of toxic people, and it's very frustrating. So when you deny or avoid unpleasant emotions, they do get bigger. So if you've ever heard the term positive vibes only, it's like, well, that's true. Positive vibes are great, but you know, I don't know, maybe today's not a great day, and it's okay to have bad days, right? So somebody says positive vibes only, you could respond with, well, I'm here for you both good and bad, right? We want people to be there for each other through the good and the bad. Sometimes we're going to have days where things aren't going well. You know, there's days where my kid has brought mud into the house and painted the walls in the bathroom. And it's like, oh boy, this is a mess. And I'm sure if you have kids with disabilities, you may have very similar experiences. I've heard a lot of different stories, you know, so understandably, like, yeah, absolutely, this is rough. This is not easy. We don't have to stay positive through all of this. We don't want to focus on the negative, but we don't have to reject that there are days that we have bad days. You know, bad days exist. I like failure's part of growth and success. You know, that's very true. It's a mindset that we have. So if one person is positive, then it's contagious. Absolutely. Like, we can be positive, but we can also hold space for feelings that, you know, this is not the greatest feeling right now, or everything will work out in the end. Well, this is really hard right now. I hope everything works out, and we're going to get through this together. So validating people's experiences is really important part of compassion and empathy. I put this quote in here because I really love it, and it makes me think of doing self-care as part of what sets my soul on fire. So the quote says, "Be fearless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire," from Jennifer Lee. And the picture is a watercolor person with kind of a watercolor rainbow heart around it. Kind of looks like they're outside with the night sky. I just love this quote. I feel like it just encompasses pursuing the things that make you happy, pursuing the things that give you energy, that bring you joy, and that's all part of self-care. So the steps to starting a self-care routine, and I'll try to wrap it up here because I know we're getting stuck on time again. The next few slides are how to make your plan and decide what's important to you, how to do a priority, pick a priority in one area, to set a goal, and to schedule time for yourself. A lot of you had questions about time, and the hardest part about self-care is setting the boundary with other people to let them know, and to set that boundary with yourself to give yourself that time and space to take care of yourself. And so sometimes what we have to do is set a boundary and be firm with it. And it may not come off as nice, but sometimes we might have to be a little bit mean in order to take care of ourselves and recharge our batteries and fill our cup. So these slides give you just a way to fill out, you know, what's important to me. What are my 3 goals in these different areas of self-care? So the next slide is this is one that you can print, or you can use it as a template to make a self-care plan. This is kind of an example of what you could do. So a lot of you already gave really great examples of things that you are doing very similar to this. You know, getting 7 hours of sleep, that's like a minimum, I think. I'm not even sure I think it's like 6 to 8 hours a night is what we're supposed to get. Some people need less sleep, and that's understandable. But when you are sleep deprived, you are, your body is at risk for just shutting down and getting out of that resiliency zone very quickly. Singing out loud. I am that person that you see driving on the highway with the music up and singing my little heart out, because that brings me joy. And I don't care if people laugh at me or think it's funny. It's part of my spiritual self-care. And I haven't really been able to do that because I'm not driving and commuting the way I used to. So I listen to music at home. Sitting outside for 30 minutes. A lot of you said going outside. I love sitting outside. I love nurturing my inner child. So one of the things I've done this summer is I've played in the sprinkler like a little kid with my children. We put the sprinkler on and they were trying to throw water on me, and thankfully I had the bucket and they were the ones that got wet. I still stayed dry. I was pretty lucky, but it was funny. And it felt good. And that helped build a relationship with my kids. You know, so that added to my heart work, and it added to my spiritual care. I've tried doing some FaceTime with friends. That can be kind of hard since a lot of us are in that age group where we have children, and when we have kids, sometimes they like to crawl all over us when we're on a Zoom call or on FaceTime. I told you recently I started painting, setting some time aside to journal. If you have like a composition notebook or a piece of paper, or you journal on your phone or on your computer, just any way, just 10 minutes to write about how you're feeling, what's going through your head right now. You know, what can you get down on paper to release some of those feelings and work through them. I always include drink water because I love coffee and I drink 1 cup a day, and then but I used to be a big soda drinker, and you know, drinking a lot of soda and caffeine, if you have some health issues, soda is not exactly the best thing for your body. So drinking more water is part of self-care. So these are just some reflective journaling exercises that you can look at after this presentation. Just doing some reflection on what your self-care looks like right now, what you'd like to do in self-care, and what are your goals? How are you nourishing your body, mind, and spirit? Then the next slide, this is a way to track your priorities. So I talked a little bit earlier about making a priority. I think when you're starting out and making a self-care plan, it's important to start with something small, right? Something that's easy to do. You can use this to put your priority area. So my priority area is my physical health. And why is this important to me? You need to have a really, thought out why statement about you. So when I started doing self-care back in March, my why statement was, it's important for me to do self-care because this is a very, my stress is getting really high. And you can dig deeper into this and kind of say, look at why is it really important for you to attend to your physical self-care, your physical wellness? Why is it really important to you to spend 10 minutes journaling or reading? That is something that is self-directed from you. I can't tell you what that is. And then setting a goal for yourself. Maybe you want to read 1 book a month. Maybe you want to walk for 30 minutes a day. Set a goal. And then for the first 3 days, these are little, you can fill these little hearts in, the heart going back to self-care, self-love, and just track how often you do that. Try that journal prompt, try the wheel of emotions, and track your progress. I think I read something somewhere that said, if you want to start a habit, you start for the first week, you do it once a day for the first 3 days. And then it becomes more of a habit. But tracking that and celebrating it when you do it is going to help you feel affirmed and that you can do this. I loved this. This came from my therapist. Surround yourself with positive affirmations. So going back to that negative self-talk, you know, taking those negative self-talk tapes out, throwing them away, and creating a positive affirmation that you will say to yourself over and over again. I called it note to self, so you can write a little note to yourself. This is the steps to create a positive affirmation. You always start with the I am and the present tense, and then these are words that you can use and you can pick from here. I am joyful, because you can be very specific. You can say, I am joyful because today my daughter gave me the sweetest hug. I am focused today. So you're making these affirmations for yourself. You're not making them for other people. So you definitely want to look at this and say, okay, how can I affirm who I am and how I'm feeling and how I'm doing? I am courageous because I am getting up today. Getting out of bed sometimes is a big deal for people. So this is another printable. You can use this to write out your positive affirmation and tape it to your bathroom mirror. You can put it on your refrigerator. You can put it in your wallet, carry it around with you. Just creating that positive affirmation, writing it out and keeping it with you, and just reminding yourself every time you start to feel negative, going back to that positive affirmation. I am loved. I am courageous. I am fearless. And then keep that in mind while you're going through your day to help build and surround yourself with those affirmations. This is just a calendar. And you may have a calendar at home. You may want to use your phone. If you have a smartphone, there's a lot of trackers. But this is a way for you to put the month in, the day, the date, and what you did for your self-care. And you can put check marks, you can put stickers, you can put smiley faces, whatever works for you. But it's important to keep track of what you're doing so you can celebrate your victories and say, I did self-care every day this week. I am so proud of myself. And you should be. So this is another printable. My feelings are valid because my experience is valid. Absolutely right now, this is a very valid experience of stress, being overwhelmed and wanting to do something for ourselves. And maybe the grief is very valid for you. And just acknowledging your feelings is part of self-care. Stuffing it down and saying, I'm not going to deal with that right now. I'm not going to deal with the grief because that's just going to make me grieve more later. Or it's going to upset me right now. But sometimes leaning into those feelings of grief and leaning into those feelings of sadness helps you feel them and experience them. It helps you validate them so that you can move on to being positive, to filling your cup so you're not pouring from an empty cup, and to be a good caregiver. So you can do this. So I know that a lot of the questions came in about time and management and how in the world do you do self-care when everything that's going on, you know, there's no boundary between if you're working from home and you have kids at home, your home life and your work life are a little intertwined a little bit more than they used to be. So this is where a little tough love comes in, and it's really important to tell the people around you that you need to do self-care for your well-being. So you may have to be a little firm. But if you're caring for others, you know, by caring for your self-care needs, you're able to better cope with the stresses and the situations that the situation is causing. You're able to cope with those stressors a little bit more regularly or consistently. If you're caring for others, then you, by doing self-care, it helps to avoid burnout. I know that a lot of times it feels like people say self-care, 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 and not having actual tools can be a barrier to doing self-care. But again, you know, it's really important that you do self-care so that you aren't burnt out and you have a sense of hope to get through what we're going through right now. I always say that it's really a good practice to make that promise to myself, because if I'm willing to break a promise to myself, what does that say about how I feel about me? It doesn't sound good, right? So make a promise to yourself to do self-care, and don't break it, because that will say a lot about how you feel about yourself. I put this quote in here from Emily Dickinson. I think this is a really nice little poem. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. So I hope that resonates with you the way it did with me. So sticking to your self-care plan, remember that this is a journey. It's not a one-way trip. My boss always says this is a marathon, not a sprint. So it's really important to slow down. When you make your plan, just sit down and make a plan on what your goals are. You can start small. I was thinking about it earlier today, even just 10 minutes of reading. If I try and read a book for 10 minutes, I'll probably fall asleep. And that tells you something about my need for self-care right now. But, you know, ideally you would spend like 30 minutes. What about 30 minutes a day on wellness routines? You can do 10 minutes in one area, 15 in another. It's up to you how you spend that time. But definitely making that devotion of time to yourself is going to help you feel less stressed out. Keeping track of what you do. That's why we included a calendar and the little hearts that you can fill in, so you can celebrate those small victories. In this picture, there's a little sign that says every day is a fresh start, and it has a little plant next to it. Every day is a new day to try again. So picking out your priorities, what's important to you right now? Is it your physical health? Is it your mental well-being? Is it those emotional or spiritual well-being? And then work on that playlist that you have. You may have those negative tapes, and make a new one. Start working on those positive affirmations. You may even make an actual playlist. Sometimes music can be really inspiring to motivate you to work through a challenge. That's a piece that I really enjoy is music. It does kind of give me some energy. And so the last thing I want to share with you is the SCOOP trainings. We are in the process of developing the SCOOP training, which is stay connected with friends and family, having compassion for yourself and others, observing your use of substances, that it's okay to ask for help, and physical activity to improve your mood. So definitely take a look from our division and our department on these trainings, and you can invite us to do them in your community. You can invite us to do self-care in your community. Those are also some options. We have some other trainings that we do on wellness and advocacy, and I'm happy to help give information on that. And then we really want to have a little focus on the 3 W's. If you haven't seen that coming out of the department, this is how to know where to wear a mask. Know your 3 W's when you leave the home, if you have to leave your home. And that's wearing a cloth face covering, waiting 6 feet apart to avoid close contact, and washing your hands or using hand sanitizer. We've included in this one, these are 2 graphics you can find on the NCDHHS website. We have both English and Spanish. We also have how to properly use a face covering. Our dashboard, I was trying to find the word there. Our dashboard for COVID-19 is listed here, and then the Prevent and Protect toolkit, as well as some information for schools in Spanish on the 3 W's. And if we have time for questions, Deborah, let me know. I'm more than happy to take questions. My time is your time until about 4:30. So.
Yeah, I had scheduled it to 4:15. So if they want
perfect.
to pop off, that's fine. But if you have questions, you can type them in the chat box, and we can check them, or I can try to unmute your line if you want to just verbally. You can just raise your hand and I can unmute you. if you have a question. Kate, thank you so much. This was so helpful. We got a lot of great participation.
Good.
Chat box, a lot of great comments in terms of the usefulness of this presentation, especially in today's time and environment. So I want to thank you. We do have someone with a hand up. Let's see.
Awesome.
Can unmute. Let me go up. Ro, are you able to unmute? Say awesome training. Thank you, thank you. Fabulous webinar. Let's go to the Q&A. This was excellent. Thank you. I can't wait to use these ideas, these wonderful ideas, and mentioned in the presentation.
Yeah. Where do we get a copy of the document? And you know, I left something out. There is a journaling. If anybody is interested in journaling prompts, I have a prompt that that I found. I pulled it out, and I talked a little bit about, especially if you're a parent, nurturing that inner child part of you, finding the things that are finding the things that bring you joy. So if you think back to a time when you were younger, when you were a child, and describe that time. Think about how carefree you were when you were a kid, swinging on a swing, you know, just kind of that joy of going up and down and seeing how high you could go, or going hiking or playing in the woods. So this journal prompt is a really good one. It says, describe your inner child. What enlivens her? What scares her? What comforts her? And how does she like to play? And that's something I'd be happy to share that with anybody, but it's from a book called Sacred Motherhood. And I always think of self-care as that nurturing. A little bit of it is nurturing your inner child, but a lot of it is just listening to your body and saying, what do I really need right now? And that's definitely a big part of it. So thank you for letting me share today.
Well, and I wrote down the names of the participants that need a copy of the handouts. We sent one out yesterday. You may have an email to all the people that registered. We sent out a copy of all the handouts from ECAC. So you may have an email in your mailbox from ECAC. But I went on and I'm taking down the names of the people that need a copy. And I also put my email address in the chat box if you want to email us with any additional questions. That hand went down, Kate, so I think we may be good in terms of, someone said check the spam folder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it may have gone into spam.
So when you do get this copy, there's a lot of embedded links in the document. At the end of the document, so this is my contact information and the contact information for our team. We do a monthly handout, a monthly update of what's going on in the state, you know, things to think about. Our division right now has a series of town halls as well as suicide prevention town halls. So we really look at the spectrum of ages from birth to adulthood. And so one of our director, actually, Director Armstrong from the division, is doing a series of town halls on UNC. And so we want to share that kind of information with participants. And also in this particular presentation throughout here, I mentioned we have some information, just links to different sources that you may need. If you follow, I'm a big fan of The Mighty. If you've ever heard of the Mighty, that's a really great one for parenting when you have a child with a disability, or if you yourself have a mental health diagnosis or experience. And then we also have included some tips on healthy sleep, so creating a healthy sleep environment. That's one thing, you know, our lives can kind of merge into our rooms, and our rooms really, our bedroom needs to be a place of sanctuary and rest. It's really easy for us to say, well, I'm just going to bring in my laptop and maybe sit in my bed and do some work, or maybe you read your phone late at night, and that blue light can make you, you know, not sleepy. It wakes your brain up. These are some apps you can look into. And then some YouTube videos for meditation, for stress. My stepson once, he was so sweet, when he was about 16, he said, "You seem really stressed out right now." My daughter was like 2 years old. So he gave me these stress cards, and it's like a deck of cards, and you pull one and it has a mindfulness practice. These are some more links for making a self-care plan. There's so many out there. We also included the links for the LME MCOs. If you're not connected with one of the managed care organization or the local management entities that provide services in the community, that's a good place to connect, especially if you're looking for the respite care. And Deborah, I know you've mentioned Cardinal, getting connected.
On innovations. Mm-hmm.
Cardinal Innovations. Yep, that's one of our LME MCOs. So this is their contact information, and you can find your county, and it's all color coded. And then we also included some advocacy organizations, including ECAC, because we want people to be able to access all of those. So yeah, just this is, hopefully it's very comprehensive. And if anybody has questions, please feel free to email me. I'm available. So.
Kate, I love your presentation, and I love that we're not all here listening to an expert. Yes, you're an expert, but you're also living it. You too are a parent of a child with a disability, just like many of the rest of us. And so you're in the trenches with every one of us every day. And honestly, through COVID, it's been in the combat zone, and we're all warriors. And you know, it's nice when you are presenting this, living it too. And there's a beauty and an authenticity to that you just can't replicate. And I think that you gave us such a comprehensive listing of tools that each one of us can really customize and individualize the tools that are right for our individual respective toolboxes to move forward. And we all hear about how we're supposed to put our oxygen mask on first, and this is really reaffirming that we really are, and we truly are all in this together. And the families out there who have children with disabilities and struggling through the duration, the longevity of COVID, we see you, we hear you, and we deeply care. And that is one reason why we wanted this webinar to happen today. So thank you so much for providing all of this really vital information. It's going to be very useful.
Yeah, and you know, I would love to hear how people do with it. You know, if you want to tell me your story, I love hearing stories like that. I love hearing people say, like, you know, I learned a lot, and then I tried yoga, but it really wasn't for me, and then I found this, you know, or I found what is it, in Japan they do tree bathing. They go hiking in forests and they call it tree bathing, and it's just disconnecting from technology and soaking in nature and just listening to the sounds, and focusing on the things around you, the way that maybe, you know, right now it's really hot out, so it's like nobody really, some people love going outside in this weather. I'm not that person, but you know, some people really love going hiking in this and just feeling the heat of the weather outside and feeling the sun on their skin. Like, there's something to be said about that physical.
Well, actually, I took my son this week to the park. I told you my son is totally blind, because he had asked about walk-in meditation. So we went out about 8 a.m. and we listened to all the different sounds. I mean,
wow.
he felt the cool breeze first thing in the morning, and the sound of the birds and all the other creatures out in the park. And so that it really did make a difference.
It does.
I don't see any more questions. Most thank you. And I got all the messages in terms of handouts that we will send out. And also someone asked about a certificate. We will send you it's an email, but we will have someone to send you to validate that you attended this webinar. And you will also get an evaluation. We hope that you will complete the evaluation, and we'll send Kate a copy of that as well. So again, thank you for your time. And you have my email address if you have additional questions. And yes, we'll send the link for the recording to all the people that registered. And enjoy the rest of your evening and enjoy the weekend. And remember to take care of yourself.
Even for 5 minutes. Even for 5 minutes. All right. Be well.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Awesome. Really was. I love your tools because they provide structure, and we all have lost structure and crave it desperately right now. And some of your tools, you know, will bring that piece of structure back into our lives. So I like that.
Yeah, I started my day. So today I got up and my son was up. So he came into our room at 3:30, and he was really upset because he couldn't find his tractor. And